Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. Real estate can affect your life positively, but also the people you serve. Today we'll explore a great way for you to do good in the world and do well for yourself. What if a single family house could net $10,000 or more a month? That's what we're going to talk about today, and we've got a great guest on the Real Estate Guys radio program. Are you achieving everything you want in life? What if there was a time-tested way for you to get everything you've ever dreamed of? The most successful people in life set goals and keep themselves accountable. But how? The good news is that it's not rocket science. You too can learn the skills and unleash the motivation that will create success in your life. And now is the time. Hi, this is Robert Helms, and I'd like to personally invite you to attend Create Your Future, the 2023 Goals Retreat, January 6th through 8th in beautiful Lake Las Vegas, Nevada. This unique weekend event has been called phenomenal, inspirational, and life-changing by the thousands of people that have attended. Hear from some of them and find out more at realestateguysradio.com under events or call 888-489-7723, extension 18. Get your life back on track, physically, spiritually, and financially. Attend the 2023 Goals Retreat on the first weekend of the new year. Click events at realestateguysradio.com to register. This is no dress rehearsal. Live the life you were meant to. Visit realestateguysradio.com or call 888-489-7723, extension 18 today. Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. Sitting in the co-host seat is our financial strategist, Russell Gray.
Hey, Robert.
One of the things we love about real estate is there are so many different ways, places, and product types to invest in. Real estate isn't just one thing. Yeah, we think of it in terms of property, and we, of course, coach a lot of folks how to raise money to do bigger deals, and sometimes they buy property, and sometimes they buy businesses, and sometimes they invest in all kinds of different things. And our premise has always been, before you're a real estate investor, you're an investor. You have money that you put aside. You live below your means. You produce more than you consume, and you put some of that capital to work in something like a tangible asset, like a single-family house, an apartment building, a strip center, or several acres of productive farmland. Whatever the deal is, you have to become interested and educated in a niche. You think about the doctors and lawyers that get paid the most. They're specialists. They aren't generalists. Generalists in those professions get paid the least, frankly, but specialists can charge a ton. We have a tax attorney that is well-versed in the tax law of two different countries. That person is so rare that his hourly billing rate is $1,500 because there's very few people on earth that have the depth of knowledge that he has to be able to give you legal advice in two jurisdictions. So the point is, you might want to consider at some point not just owning a bunch of houses somewhere, but being really strategic about developing a niche that can make sense. And today we're going to talk about one of the niches that we've been fans of for a long, long time, and that's residential assisted living.
Yes, I think that one of the things as any investor, but especially even as a real estate investor, is just realizing that the world changes. If you study history and marketing and demographics just in recent history, one of the big economic drivers has been the baby boomer demographic. Got a chance to watch It's a Wonderful Life. It's holiday season. Watched It's a Wonderful Life, my favorite movie of all time. And there George Bailey is building these little tiny homes, and all the soldiers are coming back from World War II, and that kicked off the generation of baby boomers. These soldiers came back, made babies, and all of the seasons of life that big demographic went through drove big economic changes. And so paying attention to where that demographic is in its evolution, it is a kind of a piece of the puzzle. When I decided way back when to get into the mortgage business at the beginning of the 2000s, really at the end of 1999, part of the reason I did it was because I had been following Harry Dent in the Roaring 2000s and his demographic description of the baby boomers, and I knew enough about financial planning that it seemed to me that baby boomers would begin moving their money from equities or stocks into more conservative positions, bonds, and that demand on bonds that bid up would drive interest rates down and make credit readily available. I thought equity would happen, real estate would be a good place to be, mortgage would be a good place to be, and that turned out to be a really, really good move. And so you start looking around going, okay, where are we at with a demographic, for example, and then how do you turn that into an investment opportunity? And so when we went searching for answers to that question, one of the things we discovered out on tour, if you will, was residential assisted living.
And specifically, a niche within residential assisted living. If you think about when your parents or grandparents get to that age where they need some help, you think about finding them a great facility where they can get the care and supervision they need. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's meals. Sometimes it's medical. There's kind of a continuum on how much help they need. I remember the first time we had my grandmother move out of her own home into a community. It was very independent. She had her own apartment, her own kitchen. She made her own meals, except at dinner. And they had a dining hall, and they all went there to dinner. She was perfectly capable of fixing her own dinner, but what she didn't have was a lot of social interaction at home by herself, and this gave her that. So there's all kinds of things that as we get older, we need, and yet there is a niche that is especially interesting to real estate investors, which are smaller homes. Now, they're big homes compared to homes you might live in or rent out, but they're smaller than what we call the big box residential assisted living facilities. Those can be very nice, but they aren't very personal. And so this niche within residential assisted living is the idea that you would own a 6, 8, 10-bedroom home and have seniors from a variety of backgrounds, ages, and etc. Stay there and receive extra care.
Yeah, and it's, going back to this demographic thing, obviously the baby boomers are entering that season. My own father, who's just ahead, I think, of the baby boomer generation. I'm not sure he's actually a boomer, pretty close, but he's just gotten to a place in life where he needs to live in a home. He needs help. And so this is very real to me. And, you shared, Robert, your experience, and I didn't even realize it until when I first discovered residential assisted living in my role as a co-host of the show when I was out scouting for new niches and content and subject matter experts way back when. But in 1990, my great-grandmother was 100 years old, and I went and visited her in a home in Florida, and it wasn't her house, but it was her house as she lived there with other people. And I look back on that, and I didn't realize that that's what that was. So my grandmother, my dad's mother, ran for a long time a group home, and it wasn't for seniors, but it was for people who couldn't quite live on their own, and they needed a house mother, and she was the house mother, and they paid her rent to live there. So I've seen this model really my entire life from the time I was in high school. I just didn't know how to connect the dots to it and really make it work until I met the late, great Gene Guarino, who created this amazing business. He started out as an investor himself and then realized that he had so many people coming to him say, God, Gene, you're doing so great with this. Can you teach me how to do it? And he started teaching other people how to do it. And I met him when he was out on a tour and in Dallas, Texas, as a matter of fact. I always remember the day because the night before is the day I met Donald Trump. And then I flew to Dallas, Texas and met Gene Guarino. And that was a life-changing event for me also. And Gene was showing people how to do this. And I came out and I took a look at what he was doing, toured his homes, and I thought, wow, this is the real deal. And the more I studied it, the more I realized how much sense it made. And the thing that's ironic, even though that was 7 years ago, it hasn't even begun to hit the big wave that's coming.
Gene was absolutely ahead of his time. He was talking about it before other people were talking about it, but he wasn't just talking about it, he was doing it. I think he had 2 or 3 homes already when we met him, and part of his training was to go out and go through the homes and show people exactly how it worked in the real world. And he found that there was this group of folks that would much rather see mom be in a house with 6 or 10 other people as opposed to be in a big 200 or 300 unit building. There's pros and cons. We're not saying it's right or wrong, but it's harder to play at those bigger levels. At the lower levels, there's all kinds of opportunity. And to your point about the demographics, the baby boomers are just barely starting that. So we're on the early end of that. It's really parents of the baby boomers at this point, but it is an ever increasing demographic, which means there's huge demand. When we come back, You're going to meet an awesome gal. She's Gene Garrido's daughter, Isabel, and we're going to learn all about the opportunity in residential assisted living today on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Real estate investment advice right in your mailbox. Sign up for the free Real Estate Guys newsletter at realestateguysradio.com.
As I speak, inflation is robbing you at a rate north of 10%. Last year, the number one zip code that Mid-South homebuyers offered income property to Real Estate Guys listeners in appreciated by 21%. To harness that spread and protect and grow your wealth in the current economic storm, you need the 2 decades of experience in renovation and management that Mid-South homebuyers brings to their investors. Every home Mid-South offers you will have brand new components, a new 30-year roof, and a high-quality renter, all in a price range under $150,000. Their empathetic property managers will use your ROI as their North Star, while the lack of repairs on their totally renovated properties contributes to their almost 4-year average renter stay and 99% occupancy rate. Learn about their lifetime occupancy guarantee and total 1-year maintenance guarantee by emailing midsouth@realestateguysradio.com. That's midsouth@realestateguysradio.com. You'll be glad you did.
If you love real estate and have always wanted to own your own business, listen up. The Real Estate Guys and their panel of experts want to teach you how to go full-time fast in the real estate syndication business. These next few years may go down in history as one of the best times ever to acquire investment real estate. There are deals everywhere if you know where to look and how to assemble the resources. The Secrets of Successful Syndication seminar will show you how to make big money doing big deals from a team of experts that have syndicated projects totaling more than $1 billion. Don't wait for someone to give you a raise or create a job for you. Attend the Secrets of Successful Syndication and learn how to build a team, raise capital, find deals, and make full-time money in 6 months or less. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events. All the big players use syndication as a way to diversify risk, optimize profits, and earn big money. You can too. Go to realestateguysradio.com and click on events.
Hi, this is Lawrence Yun, Chief Economist with National Association of Realtors, and you are listening to the Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program, now in our 26th year of broadcast, approaching year 27. It's crazy to think about. Today we're talking about a really unique use of real estate, and that is residential assisted living. You've already heard pretty much everything Russ and I know about it, so it's time to turn to an expert. Please welcome to the show our friend Isabel Garino. Hey, Isabel.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to see you, and I just appreciate the work you do. I've had the opportunity to see you speak live a few times, and my goodness, you have this down. We were, of course, big friends and fans with your dad who got you into this business, and it really has only gotten better. Hit the high notes of why you see so many people interested in residential assisted living.
You know, it's been interesting over the last 2 years, especially. We've seen, what happened with COVID and the aftermath of that. And it put a big flashlight on what was happening in big facilities, and people are looking for alternatives. So it was that prime time for us to be like, hey, we're here and we're probably better. And if you just come inside, I guarantee you're going to like it more. So strangely enough, I know COVID and senior housing, it sounds like a terrible mix. For us, it was kind of the best thing that ever happened. We have had waiting lists out the door because of that. And the shift in the market with obviously more and more baby boomers starting to age. We're still 10, 20, 30 years out from most of them needing assisted living. But that shift in the market, plus the exposure to what's been happening in big boxes, it's been blowing up.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the shift in the baby boomers, because we talk about the demographics of this, which is undeniable. But I think when people hear that, they're like, okay, great. Everyone's rushing in to put mom and dad somewhere. But that's not necessarily the case, even though there is strong demand there and a supply imbalance. The biggest wave of what your dad always called the silver tsunami is yet to come.
Yeah. Yep. We're still, I would say, a solid 20 years out from that, but it's still important to be considering it as an investment right now, because if you wait 20 years to start, you're now going to be one of tons who are doing this. It's kind of like Airbnb. If you try to get in now, it's like everybody's doing it. You don't want to be like that with assisted living, because people aren't choosing you because you're the nicest. They're choosing you based on reputation, based on brand, based on how it feels when they walk in. So if you've been around, you know this better than anybody, right? 26, 27 years in the game, being around the longest has some pull. So it's important to get in now, start that brand, start that and create it. So not only can you have a plan for your own family members if and when they need it, but also you're cash flowing in the meantime. And when this really hits, you get to decide, do we cash out big right now, or do we continue to ride this wave? But you've built that brand, you've built that reputation, and that's really just so important.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about how people actually can get involved. But I think before we do that, it's important to note that this is something that many families go through. Mm-hmm. They get to a point where one or both of their parents just don't quite have enough skill, dexterity, mental faculty to fully take care of themselves. And there's kind of a range of services that folks can provide. Mm-hmm. But the distinction between being in, a big apartment type complex with 200 other elderly folks and being in a small home, which is what people are used to, I think that's a really important distinction. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, it's kind of like being in that private classroom where you've got 4 or 5 kids with one teacher versus the classroom with 35 kids, right? 50 kids with one teacher. And you know what quality they're getting. That's exactly what assisted living's like. When you're in those big facilities, unfortunately, the staffing ratios are typically 15-1 or 20-1. At night, I've seen 30-1 and 50-1. That's terrifying. One person cannot take care of 50 people. So in our homes, it's usually a 4-1 or 5-1 resident to caregiver ratio. And the care all of a sudden skyrockets, right? You're getting this higher quality care because you have that closer to one-on-one attention. I know most people want one-on-one care, but that costs a pretty penny. So this is a good way to get the social interaction, keep the budget somewhat reasonable, but also get really high quality care.
Now, Russ and I have had a chance to tour through some of these facilities, and it's really quite amazing how nice the environment is. And if you think about it, most people grow up in an apartment or a home, and that's what they're used to. And you kind of have that, but you also have the social interaction.
Yeah.
And the folks that live there get to know each other and interact with each other, and that makes it much more like home.
Totally. I always like to, I love hearing the big boxes marketing because they'll always hit you with we're home like. It's like, I don't want to be home like, I want to be home. This is a single family home being used for residential assisted living. It doesn't feel like a home. It's a home. That's it. At the end of the day, like you just said, we all grew up in a home. And so it makes it feel a lot better and more comfortable. Also, as you're aging, we can't forget there's a lot of memory loss that's happening. There's a lot of brain functionality that's starting to deteriorate. And so it doesn't feel like home when you're walking down a big, huge, long, scary, dark hallway with a bunch of doors that look the same. That can be really scary. And when you have trips and falls, it's more than likely because of things like that. Your vision is going away. And no matter how healthy we all stay, these things happen as we age. And so it's really important to not have different colors, long hallways, dark, things that look exactly the same. Seniors need to have different things so they can remember where they are and function better within the home. And we're really able to provide that while keeping it really luxurious and nice. So I love that about what we can do.
I think a lot of listeners will be surprised to know that there may be one of these in their neighborhood. It's not like these types of environments are limited to any part of a town, but you see these types of facilities all over the place. We have one about 4 blocks from here, and the only reason we even know about it is because we have friends whose mom is there.
Yeah.
There's no sign. It just looks like a regular single-family house.
Yeah.
So as we transition into the real estate use, what does make the right kind of home for a facility like this, Isabel?
Yeah, great question. So, depending on what state you're in, you're usually allowed to have somewhere between 6 and 16 residents in the home. So, Robert, you and I are in Arizona and we're limited to 10 residents in the home. So, with us, my homes here are 10 bedroom, 10 bath homes. Now, when I say single family, people think a 3-2, right? They're not thinking a 10 bed, 10 bath,
Right.
but it's still in a single family neighborhood. We're just talking about more upscale neighborhoods. So thinking 300 to 500 square feet per person is usually a good bet. So with 10 residents, minimum 3,000 square feet, upwards of 5 is very comfortable. Most of these seniors, they want private bedrooms and private bathrooms. They want that privacy factor. So the more you can have, the better. It's okay to have a couple shared options, but I wouldn't do all shared because you can get more per resident and that's more desired, especially based on the category of people that we're usually attracting within these homes. So it's important to have things like that. And then just being in the right demographic zone, having the daughter Judys right nearby, right? The 50 to 70-year-olds who are upper middle class, who are usually searching for their parents' care and a lot of times paying for their parents' care. They don't want to drive 45 minutes down the road because it's cheaper. They want to drive 5 minutes on their way home from work. So being near them is key.
And as you mentioned, it really is the children that are the clients. I mean, those are the folks who are going out and doing the research, looking for the home, wanting to feel comfortable and leaving their treasured, aunt or mom or dad there.
Yeah.
And that's really your target market when it comes to this, not the senior themselves.
Correct. We always say that our client is daughter Judy or son Bob. I don't want to be sexist. Okay. Guys do it too. But that is who is the client because they're typically the ones searching for the care, touring the home. You may not even meet the senior during the tour as the homeowner. You may only meet the adult children. They usually choose the home and oftentimes pay for the home. They're also the one complaining about the home or praising you for giving them an excellent experience. So it's vital that you remember who you're marketing to. It's not that 85-year-old, it's that 50 to 70-year-old. And she needs to walk in, he needs to walk in and have that wow factor. So when you're decorating the home, again, yes, we want to accommodate the 85-year-old, but we need to make sure daughter Judy walks in and goes, wow, I could see myself living here. That's like magic words. That's the bingo. That's the money right there.
So our listeners are real estate investors, and I know what they're thinking right now. They're thinking, okay, I'm going to get a big house and it's 6 to 16 residences. And wow, that's a lot to manage. That's a lot to think about. And who's going to do the care and all that. And this is the kind of thing you share with people every day. So let's talk about the various opportunities there are here, because some of it is real estate only and some of it is more like running a business.
Yes. So definitely you can play on just the real estate side of this, where maybe you're purchasing and renovating the real estate and then leasing it out to someone who's going to operate the business within the home. If you just want to play on the real estate side, that's an excellent way to get involved. And with more and more people getting into this industry, that's going to be a big part of it, because there's a lot of people who have the sweat equity side, but maybe they don't have the capital to get the real estate and renovate it. And if that's, any one of your listeners, if they're like, that's what I do all day, I get this, I can do it. It's like, that's how you should play and in this role. On the other hand, you can always own and operate the real estate and the business. Now, that doesn't mean you're working in the home, right? You're not taking care of the residents or even doing the tours, but you do own the business. So you're hiring those key players, that licensed administrator who then goes on to hire the licensed caregivers, but you're managing if anything goes wrong from the top, right? Not working in the business, but working on it. It is still a little hands-on. I would say we visit our homes every other month and then have phone calls like every week with the manager. So it's that, upkeep. I call it pactive investing, right? It's not fully passive on this side, but it's also not the most active. So it's kind of that in between when you own and operate the business side of it as well.
People that invest in a single family house have the decision, am I going to manage it myself and show it to prospects and clean it when they leave and, fill out the paperwork and collect the rent every month? Or am I going to hire a property manager to take care of it? And it's kind of like that here. Now, there are some things that you have to learn. I would say there are things to learn in any kind of real estate investing, but specifically, you've mentioned things like licensing and what the rules and regulations are. So there's a lot to learn. We can't cover all of that, but we'll leave you some resources before we're done here so folks can follow up and learn depending on where they're at and what their idea is. But I think one of the biggest things that we haven't spent any time talking about yet, and to make sure people don't tune out, maybe we should have already done this, but the attraction to this is two things. Your dad always said that you can do well and do good. And the do good part is that you are creating an awesome living environment for people that need a little extra care. Mm-hmm. And the way you do well is you do that at a profit. If I was just going to rent the real estate, it's going to rent to an operator for a premium over what that same house would rent to a normal family. And so that's why I would be attracted to doing the rehab, getting it ready to go, and renting it long-term. One, I'll get typically a longer-term lease with the professional, and two, I'll get a higher rent. Is that fair?
Very. Yep. Right on the money. That's exactly what it is. Because you've done that renovation, they're willing to pay you a little bit more than just a regular single family would. There's also something to note. They're not wanting to sign a 1-year contract. It's maybe a 3, 5, 8. I've even seen 10-year contracts because they're trying to establish roots and build a brand. So it's not like a family where you're searching for a new family or rental, tenant every year. It's kind of set it and somewhat forget it.
Love that. If you think about it, you always want to figure out what is the motivation of a tenant. If you have a starter home that you rent out, well, their motivation probably isn't to be there the rest of their life. Their motivation is to go get a job and raise a family until they can move into someplace bigger or nicer or newer, or there follows a job. But in this case, this business continues. And so you are going to find a tenant, a master tenant, if you think of it that way, who's going to want that longevity, maybe even build some options into it so that if it works well, they can stay. And it's not like if it, for some reason, the business fails, the real estate as you've set it up still has value because there's lots of other potential operators. And I know you know a lot of them. Yeah. And then there's other uses for houses that are set up this way. So I think it can make a lot of sense just from the pure real estate play. But the numbers are a lot more interesting when you look at the business. Talk about that side of it.
Yeah. So the average cost of care in America right now today is $4,500 per month per resident, right?
And when you say care, that's not just the housing, but the meals and having someone to look after them and all of that.
Yes. All in $4,500 a month. So depending on where you are in the country, it could be a lot higher or a lot lower. I think DC is right now the most expensive with average rates of $6,978. So wow. That's average. And most of these homes, you go into the average home and you don't want to leave your goldfish, let alone your grandma there. Like they're not that nice. So many of our clients are looking for above average homes for their loved ones. Especially, you have to think there's a bad culture around senior housing. We have to name it. We have to call it out. In the movies, it's like, don't you put me in a home, right? And people have that conversation with their loved ones all the time. And they say, you better take care of me. And there's a lot of guilt happening. So these adult children, they are willing, if they're not born to be a caregiver, I'm not, that's okay. That's not my God-given gift, right? It's not many of our gifts. But what I am born to do is build businesses. So if I can create a business that can provide my loved one with the best of the best care, then that's what I need to do for them. That's the best thing I can do for them to preserve my relationship with them and also have them have what they need. So when daughter Judy is coming in, she may feel very guilty during this. So if $4,500 is the average rate, she's like, I need to give mom the best of the best. A lot of these homes are charging 6, 7, 8, 9. I've heard very wild numbers of what these homes, are able to bring in. Of course, you're going to want the amenities and the features and the activities to match that. You're not just throwing a number out there, but really these homes are bringing in a pretty penny, and there are a lot of operating expenses, but you could still cash flow really well on most of these homes.
So I'm just doing some rough math here. If I have 10 residents and I'm charging them $4,500 each, That's a pretty good gross number.
Yeah.
What has to be paid out from there? So how do we get to what really looks like a return?
Yes. So your expenses will include everything from like the activities to the cable to the property insurance and property taxes, liability insurance, baking in some vacancies, then your staffing, your caregivers, your administrators, your business license renewal, all the food. I mean, the list goes on, right? So expenses on, let's say, that home at $45,000 coming in every single month, I would say it would run around $30,000, give or take, every month to run that home. If your debt service is maybe $5,000 a month, your mortgage or so, that one home should be cash flowing you $10,000 a month or 120 grand a year. And it's an average home. And I just encourage you to not do average. So that's pretty good on the lower end of what we usually talk about.
Well, this is the real attraction to investors, is they aren't having to come up with the capital to buy 200 units.
Nope.
They're buying a house, and buying a house works like it already does, like you're used to. You're going to put some money down, you're going to get a loan, or you're going to buy it outright. You're right. A simple transaction. The rehab, well, you got to learn a little bit there because there are things that have to be in place for elderly folks, but that's easy to learn. The licensing, also navigable. You can figure out what that looks like, and folks that provide this. And because this is a growing demographic, there are a lot of people that are around to provide these services. So it's not impossible, but you have to be able to at least understand what they are so you know how to hire and who to hire. And that's a big process. But at the end of the day, the returns are really attractive. I mean, I can't think of a single family house where you make $10,000 a month. The bigger a house gets and more expensive, the rent doesn't keep up. Right. So you might get, a $10,000 tenant, but that's going to be a, $7 million house. So those numbers aren't going to work. But here you get some economies of scale. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much different it is for 6 versus 16, but I think about, my grandparents, as they got older, they didn't eat very much. Right. So you don't need a ton of food. Right. But you need good quality and so forth. What else are the things that people don't think about? Some of these people are on particular medications or need access to, that kind of medical care. How does that part work?
Yeah. So within the home, day-to-day care, most of these seniors need help with 3 to 5 activities of daily living, or in the industry, we call them ADLs. Usually you don't move in for fun. You're moving in because you need help at this point. And it's usually with like bathing, going to the bathroom, taking medication, just like you're saying, which is why that licensed staff is so important. We're not having just anybody in there caring for the seniors. They've got to be the proper licensed people so that they can make sure that everything's being done in accordance with the state rules and regulations, as well as your own policies and procedures within your home. So whatever that licensing looks like in your state, if it's a state where it's not too heavy, I always recommend looking at a state where it's a lot more stringent and saying, no, we want our staff to abide by this level of care. Even as far as like sprinklers, if your state says, oh, it's okay, you don't need them, I'm always going to tell you, get them. Because if everybody else doesn't have them in the area, that's now a marketing tool for you. Hey, daughter Judy, we have sprinkle safety. Like, we're going to make sure your mom is good in an emergency. She now starts doubting the other home she just saw before you. She's like, do they not have it? Wait, what happens in an emergency? They don't care about my mom. And now she's choosing you. So there's so many things you can do to go above and beyond and really help attract and market not only the right staff to your home, but then the right seniors into your home based on those family members and what's important to them.
Our guest today is Isabel Guarino, and we're talking about residential assisted living. There's a lot more to talk about. Plus, we'll play real estate trivia next. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Live nationwide, you're listening to the Real Estate Guys. Find out more at realestateguysradio.com.
Hey, ever wished you could go back in time and do some tax planning? Now you can, just like Marty McFly. Lucky for you, a brand new federal law just made this possible with an EQRP to get tax deductions and reduce your taxable income from last year, so you can use that tax savings to invest in real estate, Bitcoin, gold, even your own business. Whether you're a full-time investor, doctor, government employee, even if you have 5 or 50 employees, the EQRP works and is your secret weapon, and now it's retroactive. Hey, I'm Damian Lupo, and we have your solution. By the way, if you got bad advice and used an IRA for an apartment syndication, you are sitting on a UBIT time bomb. But don't worry, there's a solution, the EQRP. EQRP Company is ready to help you get control of your money, kill UBIT, and help you pay way less taxes. Want to learn more about this strategy? Send an email to eqrp@realestateguysradio.com for my special EQRP report. Paying tax or letting Wall Street suck you dry is dumb. Your first step is freeing your retirement money by sending an email to eqrp@realestateguysradio.com today.
Having trouble finding deals where the numbers make sense? Invest in an asset class that delivers cash flow to you in good times and bad, and where most of that cash flow is tax-free. I'm Dave Zook. Many of you have heard me speak at Real Estate Guys events or heard me on their podcast. My team is a top 5 ATM operator in the country, and right now accredited investors can make cash flow returns well into the double digits and get huge tax deductions. For your free report on this lucrative asset class, email atm@realestateguysradio.com.
Hi, this is Anthony Melchiori from Hotel Impossible, and you're listening to The Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks for tuning into the show. There are still a few spots left for our annual goals retreat. It's called Create Your Future, and it happens the very first weekend of January in beautiful Lake Las Vegas, Nevada. If you lack clarity or focus in your life, if you only have vague aspirations and not rock-solid plans, then this event is for you. Get all the details at goalsretreat.com. That's goalsretreat.com. We're talking with Isabel Garino today about residential assisted living, the way you can turn a single-family home into a cash machine, why having a very positive effect on the people that live there. Before we get back to that discussion, it's time to play Real Estate Trivia, your chance to win a prize by knowing the answer to today's trivia question, which of course will have something to do with real estate and kind of our topic. When you hear the question and think you know the answer, send your best guess to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Give us your name, the answer to the question, and your physical mailing address. And the first person that gets it right gets this awesome book, Think Big. It's a collection of incredible stories from cool entrepreneurs, folks like Brian Buffini, Bob Bodine, Wagner Nolasco, Chris Gronkowski, and my mentor, Brian Tracy. That can be yours if you know today's real estate trivia question. Last week on the show, we were talking to two awesome young men, Devin and Ethan Wolwin, and the incredible Mark Victor Hansen, about getting started early in real estate investing. And those boys are from Ohio, so we asked this. Name the state bird of Ohio. Well, it's the cardinal. Lots of people knew that. In fact, the cardinal was named the state bird of Ohio all the way back in 1933. Here's our real estate trivia question for this week. Which country has the highest percentage of people over 65? Yeah, I guess that would make it the oldest population in the world. Which country has the highest percentage of its population over the age of 65? If you know or want to take a guess, send it to us at trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Trivia@realestateguysradio.com. You'll need to send us your name, your physical mailing address, and the answer to the question. First person that gets it right gets this awesome book, Think Big. That's today's real estate trivia question. We're talking with Isabel Garino about residential assisted living, a fascinating area of real estate. And Isabel, I know that you deal with all kinds of people, from people that are just getting started to folks that have several homes. One of the advantages of doing this from an investment point of view is if you get good at it, now it's easy to open up another home. And because of the demographics, you don't have to go to another state. You can go a few blocks away sometimes. And I know you have a lot of students that have done that. They open home number one, they figure it all out, they bump their head, they get the lessons, they call you for help, and then they get it up and working, and it's time to open a second, a third, a fourth home. And you don't have to do that, but certainly that is a path and a way that people can continue to achieve those economies of scale once you've learned this. And really what you guys do at the Academy is teach this to folks. There's, as we've talked about, all kinds of things that you have to learn generally and then specifically within your jurisdiction. And before we're done, we'll tell tell folks how they can avail themselves of an awesome webinar series that your dad put together that I think is really paints the picture of this. But let's talk about, as people are trying to figure this out, what the common questions are. People go, well, this sounds great. I like the numbers, but what is it people are concerned about when they're thinking about getting involved?
Great question. So I would say the number two things everyone always asks me about is HOAs and liability.
Okay.
So liability, everyone's super concerned. Well, what happens if, right? We can ask that question all day long in any form of real estate. At some point, you have to be willing to take a risk. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. We all know this.
Yep.
So with residential assisted living, there is a reason that there's not hundreds of thousands of people involved in this, doing this every single day. You know, when I'm in a big room of investors, I'll be, raise your hand if you're doing it, and maybe one or two other people's hands go up. But when I say who's doing fix and flip, everyone's hands skyrocket, you know? So it's just different. There are rules, there are regulations. This is, run through, getting approved through your state, getting the license there. The fire marshal's got to come over and make sure everything's good. But liability, you want to make sure that home is as senior safe as possible, right? Putting in everything that you need, ramps and guardrails, handrails, every safety feature that you can. It does not have to be ADA compliant. So you want it as close to that as possible, but it doesn't have to be all the way there. So that's important when you're thinking about liability, is setting the home up for success. And then getting that liability insurance. It's about $1 or $2 per day per resident. It's a line item. It protects you, your staff, and your seniors. And that's what's important at the end of the day, as well as that strong relationship, communicating with daughter Judy, letting them know we are taking the best care of mom or dad that we possibly can, making sure when they come in, they're seeing you do those safe practices, so that way they can have their mind at ease. So if and when their loved one does come to pass, right? Because 90% of these people are going to die within the home. This is end of life care, that it's not this big, oh my gosh, what happened? If you move into assisted living, it's kind of insinuated this is the end of life. We're all on the same page here. It's completely different than a 9-year-old dying in a car accident, right? That's tragic. That's not supposed to happen. But a 95-year-old dying in assisted living, that is life. So it's very different. But having that protection, having that insurance, vital, key, but nothing to be too worried about. You set yourself up right and you're good to go.
All right. I think that would have occurred to me, liability, but I'm not sure I would have thought about HOAs. So what do you have to say about a homeowners association that someone might buy a home as part of?
Yes. So people are always very concerned about, how can I do this in an HOA neighborhood, right? They're saying I can't have a business in the neighborhood. Well, number one, if there's a neighborhood with an HOA and one without one right next door, I'm going to tell you to go to this neighborhood. Just stay away from the problems. We don't want to choose problems. But if you do live in an area where every, neighborhood is in an HOA and you can't get away from it, it is what it is. There's many different things you can do. Number one, the Federal Fair Housing Act is on your side. It's a federal law that says it's discriminatory against disabled people to say that they can't live next to you, basically. So that protects you, because by the time you need assisted living, you are considered disabled. We created the RAL National Association, which protects all 30,000 of these care homes across the country. We have legal backing and power there for you. So if you run into any of those issues, our team has your back and you'll be okay, but it doesn't mean there's not going to be a fight, But we also have to consider, especially since our world looks very different and we have a lot of people working from home these days. Usually the person who's in charge of the HOA is a realtor, maybe an accountant, someone who works from home, might be even having their LLC with that address on it. So if you're shutting down my business, we're shutting down all neighborhood businesses, and they don't like that one. So there's a lot of different angles you can play with this, but an HOA can't tell you no. They do not have more power than the federal government. So we'll lean on the feds for this one.
All right. Well, that's a good answer. Now, I think the other thing to talk about is the fact that with the number of students students you guys have all over the country, you've seen people choose specialties like memory care and even ethnicity. And can you speak to some of those ideas?
Yes, I love a niche home. I think that's such a cool way to separate yourself because the big boxes are definitely not doing that. Here in Arizona, we have a home called Shalom Home. I mean, how cute is that? You don't have to be Jewish to live there, but for a senior who that's how they were raised and, that's the traditions they want to celebrate, the holidays, the food, everything, that is so cool to be able to do that. We have students who have like vegan homes and vegetarian homes, keto homes. You could do it based on diet, religion, ethnicity. We have all men's homes, all women's homes, all sorts of different things. And I think that's a really amazing way to kind of separate yourself because you also have to think there's many seniors who came to America from other countries. And as they age, they may go back to their home language, right? English is their second language. And now it's hard for them to remember that. And they're speaking Spanish every day. And so having caregivers who speak English and Spanish and listening to Latin music in the home and different fun things like that can really be a nice touch for them and a great way to charge a little more and just separate yourself from the pack. So niche homes, fantastic way to get into this.
And I would imagine that if you find a niche that is in high demand, you could continue down that path or maybe have several of them. Now, let's talk about the education and support, because this is more than just learning how to buy a house and fill out some mortgage forms. There's more involved. Not to scare people away, quite the opposite, but you guys spend an inordinate amount of time training people and you develop some great programs. Tell us how that works.
Yes. So we love teaching and training investors and entrepreneurs how to start, own, and operate their own residential assisted living home. I know you were sharing earlier, we don't just teach you to do it once. We want to show you how to scale, how to do this so you can eat for life, right? So we go through everything, how to find the home, fund the home, fill the home. We teach you what you need in your business plan. Russ is there at the events sharing all about syndication. We love having him out there. We're going through step by step, hiring the right people, giving the tours, what you need in your licensing, your policies and procedures. We even take you on a bus tour to see my properties and a bunch of our other students' properties so people can see, touch, feel, really understand the industry from the inside out. It is A to Z, all comprehensive. And we love being able to teach people because it's just so much fun when somebody comes and they get it, especially when it's something happening in their own life. So their why is just so strong because they really want to be able to provide a quality place for the loved ones in their life. And it's kind of that two birds with one stone, like we were sharing earlier, the do good and do well. They can impact their community, their family, these seniors, but also cash flow like crazy. And who doesn't want to feel good about the money they're making? So it's a great way to be able to do both.
Well, and I think it's obvious that if you're going to be overseeing directly, you would need to be at the training. But even if you're planning to passively invest, we don't understand something at the level we need to until we've been trained, until we've seen it. And the fact that I'm glad to hear that you're going through the homes, because I know that didn't happen during COVID, but that's just such a hands-on way to see what you teach. Yeah. And it also, the other thing it does is show that you kind of know what you're doing because you're actually in the business and not just teaching about it. Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. It's great stuff. When we come back, we're going to tell folks how they can get more information. In fact, this series of videos that your dad put together really do a lot of explaining of some of the nuances and so forth. And we'll tell folks how they can get at your next training. Isabel, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
There's the amazing Isabel Garino. More when we come back. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Need help with your real estate investment portfolio? Check out the resources page at realestateguysradio.com.
If you've been listening to the Real Estate Guys for a while, then you've heard about the legendary Investor Summit. Simply put, it's the highest level event we do, and the content, faculty, and attendees are amazing. If you're serious about taking your real estate investing to the next level, then join us next summer. You'll spend an entire week with like-minded investors, world-class educators, and real-world professionals, and you'll have a blast. It all begins June 6, 2023 in Ambergris Caye, Belize. Visit realestateguysradio.com and click on the tab that says Summit to learn more and reserve your spot. We'll spend a sun-drenched week learning and networking with more than 25 class sessions and breakouts, plus small format roundtable discussions, great dinner conversations, and a ton of fun. It's nearly 70% full already, but there's room for you if you go to realestateguysradio.com and click Summit and make plans to spend a week with the Real Estate Guys and an all-star faculty on the 21st Annual Investors Summit on Sand.
Hey, this is John Assaraf, and you are listening to The Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. We are just around the corner from the 2023 Goals Retreat. It's called Create Your Future. Happens the first weekend of the new year, and it is bursting at the seams, but we'll make room for you if we can. All the details on the website at realestateguysradio.com. Under events, look for Create Your Future. Well, my goodness, I always enjoyed hearing Jean present, and Isabel is absolutely a chip off the old block.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember back when I first met you, and you were talking about having grown up in a real estate family, being around it the whole time with your father, Bob. And, me, I came from an entrepreneurial family, but my parents weren't into real estate, so I was an outsider looking in. Isabel grew up kind of in residential assisted living. Gene and his wife, Mona, were running these 3 homes and then opened up the academy. Isabel was in there working by his side pretty soon right after she got out of college. And she's very, very familiar with everything that's going on, and she's really come into her own. She's such a dynamic young lady, so intelligent, so articulate. And I think the one thing that really has to come out is Jean's emphasis, and now Isabel's emphasis through the academy, on doing good. Because this is the kind of business, and I think real estate in general is the kind of business where you really need to care about people. This is not where you want to be a slumlord. This is not where you want to have a bunch of deferred maintenance. This is not where you want to take the responsibilities of the roof over someone's home lackadaisically. You really do need to run it like a business. The clientele is more affluent. That's great. Obviously, the rents are gigantic, and that's fantastic. And depending on how you structure it, as Isabel mentioned, you can be renting to a business owner operator and just be on the real estate side, and that's more like having a commercial building. But the beauty is, it's not a single use property. It's not a single purpose property. If you think about that, if I go buy a big box or a medical office building or something where I'm going to run a kind of a medical type facility, I only have one potential buyer on the backside. If I want to get out of that deal, I only got one way to go. I'm either going to sell it to an owner or I'm going to sell it to another investor, but it's going to be only for that purpose. Whereas these things are actually beautiful homes, and they could be put back into service as a beautiful home. So a homeowner is your target market. You would be able to sell it to another investor who would want to invest in it just as a residential rental. That's another outcome. You could have somebody come in and use it for a residential assisted living. So you could sell it to another operator, another investor who wanted to play there, or someone else could use it for another type of multi-use housing, whether it's recovery housing or whatever. So you have a lot of exit strategies. And I love that about this particular niche.
It also has great economies of scale built in just to running a home for a number of people. Then you start thinking about adding to your portfolio. And in many markets, there is a huge demand for this. And you find the right market with the right demand, pretty easy to add a second house once you've had success and client base and referrals. It gets pretty exciting. Of course, one of the big challenges people have is we're talking about bigger homes in many areas. These are $600,000, $800,000, $1.5 million homes. And most people aren't going to be able to qualify for that without the offset in income, and that may not be allowed with the lender's profile of this type of use. And so they turn to real estate syndication, which is exactly why for many years you've been presenting that component at the trainings that Isabel and the company do.
Yeah, it actually started quite some time ago, but 8 times a year they do this training. It always sells out. It's always a packed house. It's a fantastic group of people. They're very enthusiastic. And, for people to get into the space, there's going to be some CapEx, and it takes time to ramp the business up. And so you have to be pretty well capitalized. And so if you're sitting out there going, hey, this thing sounds great, but, I'm not sitting on $500,000 or $2 million or whatever the number is. Well, this is where you have to understand the yields are so high and the category is backed by real collateral that's valuable in the real world. And so it isn't just a venture on a business. It's actually a real estate play that there are investors who would definitely want to come alongside you, and you can afford to pay premiums, if you will, for the capital relative to, what it would cost for you to borrow conventionally and still have it pencil. And of course, the thing is, as interest rates are rising, as lending is potentially getting a little bit tighter, this is really the time for private capital to step up. So, whether you're interested just as an investor, say, hey, look, I got money. I see the demographics. I get the value proposition to the marketplace. It makes sense to me. I'd like to put my capital to work, or at least see what kind of yields I can get. Then you want to understand the way the business works, and you can invest in an operator and be owner in the business or owner in the real estate or both. Or if you're somebody who says, hey, you know what, I'd like to really get involved in this thing, kind of like where you would a short-term rental, where I'm kind of active and I'm involved. And again, to Isabel's point, you're not doing the care, but you're overseeing the operation. Just like if you own a short-term rental, you're probably not doing the house cleaning. You're probably not doing the yard work. You have people that do that, but you oversee them and you're making sure that you're paying attention to detail because your clientele is a little bit more discriminating.
It is a lot to learn, but it's easy to learn. In fact, Gene has a great webinar that he did a few years back, and you can get a copy of that. They actually have it broken into lots of modules, and it's a great start, at least a first look into this business. If you're interested in that, all you have to do is send an email to ALF, like Assisted Living Facility, ALF at realestateguysradio.com. You'll get a link over to the page where the Residential Assisted Living Academy has these webinars that you can watch. They're 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 18-minute kind of segments, and you can really get your mind around it. If after that it sounds interesting to you, consider going to one of their trainings. And if you want to learn how to raise capital, well, come to our training, The Secrets of Successful Syndication, which is coming up in March. Hey, big thanks to Isabel Guarino for sharing her thoughts and ideas and some really cool things with us today. Next week, we've got an amazing guest from a field that you're probably not used to hearing us talk about, but he's going to share a ton with you next week on the Real Estate Guys radio program. Until then, go make some equity happen.
This episode of the Real Estate Guys radio show is brought to you by Paradigm Life. Powerful cash management strategies using life insurance. Learn more at beyourbank.com. Mid-South Home Buyers. Low-cost, turnkey cash flow properties in Memphis, Tennessee. Corporate Direct. Asset protection strategies for real estate investors from attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Find these and other great companies under the Resources tab at realestateguysradio.com. To learn how you can expose your product or service to the Real Estate Guys audience, call 888-489-7723 extension 4. That's 888-489-7723 extension 4. Or use the feedback page at realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys radio show.